BRN, where educators share what works.
Caroline, it's brilliant because like as you're talking about like what ingredients are in your refrigerator, my mind immediately went to project-based learning. These are materials I have. This is the project I need to make. How can I make this happen? And just being able to take a picture of that, upload it, and get that feedback. And then maybe even asking, what's a supply that I need that I don't have that would make this even better? Morning, Caroline.
Good morning.
Good morning. I brought a friend. I want to introduce you guys to John.
Hello, John.
Good morning, everybody. How's it going?
Good, thank you. Nice to meet you.
So, John, go ahead, grab a chair, pull on up to the table.
I am so excited to see you all. It's been a while, and I feel like I'm in a different place from when we first started these conversations, and I really wasn't even touching AI. I was a little anxious and nervous about it, but I'm glad that we met together to talk about what we were doing. I'm excited to share some new things that I'm doing and new ways in which I'm using AI, and how I've even started writing a grant for our school, co-authoring a grant for our school to train people on AI. It seems like more educators and teachers want to know about AI.
Definitely.
Our superintendent even invited me and my coworker to come to their superintendent's conference to talk to superintendents about AI and how people are using it. So I'm just curious. And John, welcome. I want to know who you are and what you're doing. Well, what is everybody doing with AI?
I can start off. I teach special ed. This year I have 9 brand new students to me on my caseload. I have 9 students, all in 3rd grade, which I'm excited because oftentimes I work with students in 3 or 4 different grade levels. So this year I'm going to be able to stay in 1 grade, and I'm very excited. And I think it'll give me the chance to actually dip into AI more. And so I'm really excited to learn today.
Julie, what was that moment? I mean, hopefully it was, our conversations here. However, what was it about your experience even like a year ago where you really weren't dabbling in things and like all of a sudden now it's a part of your daily routine? What was that shift like, and what was the moment where you're like, I got to do this?
That's actually funny that you said daily routine, because it truly has become, I think, a daily routine. Just notice the time suck that went away. If I needed to put together a letter of recommendation, if I needed to put together some suggestions or a timeline, and even for the grant that I helped to write, I took a lot of that information, and because we had to turn it around so quickly, it was my thoughts, but asked ChatGPT to help me just organize it or rethink it or help me make a timeline. And I said, oh my gosh, why would I not use this? I still had to vet it. I still had to read it. I still shared what I created with others. But it just really took away from hours of putting something together and turning it into minutes. And then my colleague introduced me to Gamma, and that's how we created our slideshow for the superintendents. I mean, I had to, again, go back and vet it and change it, but it was fun to just see the ideas just flow so quickly.
How did you go though from because this is what I see when I start talking to other educators who haven't really started using it much, they still view it a lot as like cheating. And I know teachers deal with imposter syndrome anyways. And if we start using AI, all of a sudden things get done much more quickly. And we feel this sense of like, I didn't really do it. Something else did it on my behalf. How do we go from that imposter syndrome, is this really cheating, to it's part of my daily routine, this is just what I do?
I could only obviously speak for myself. So it's a combination of, I've changed my position. I'm no longer the data person. I am in the instructional services department. So I'm around more people who are working with AI, and where we're having conversations on how we can help other educators. So that's one. Two, I really used it while I was working on my dissertation to help find articles, to help, even Grammarly, to help me reorganize what I was saying, to come up with suggestions. And I really feel, because I've been reading more educational research, I've been participating in educational research, I'm comfortable with saying I know my work, and I always want my work to shine through, but this is a tool that helps me to do my work. So I think it was a combination of job changing, finishing a dissertation, being around people like you all, and people at work who are truly using it and embracing it in different ways. Let's call it a PLN or a PLC, has helped me rethink and reframe.
I have a question, actually, because I think it sounds like I'm maybe where Julie was last year. Don't know. I'm very new to this. And my question is, when you say vetting, I know what that word means, but what do you mean by vetting the AI? Because I think that might be what's slowing me down. In other words, I've tried AI, I've dabbled in it, I do some things, and then it turns out not the way I want, and I get lazy and I say, okay, maybe another time. What do you mean by vetting?
Yep. So a couple of things. A, vetting the apps. I've tried a myriad of different apps and what works best for me. So, for example, when I was working on my dissertation, I found that Tom actually suggested Perplexity, and that did help me find research online or articles. So vetting apps, but then even just vetting what the AI gave me back. So I would read it, but then I would also ask a colleague, could you just read through this with me? Does this make sense? Does this sound like me? I can tell when something does not sound like me. So that's what I mean by vetting. In school, we have to pick specific apps to use with students. We actually have a breakthrough. There are some apps we can use with students. So when I'm putting a data privacy hat on, I mean vetting of what apps we can use with students. So I have 3 different kinds of vetting. What works for me, what is it feeding back to me, and then if I extend it to a classroom when I'm training teachers, what can teachers use with students?
So thank you, that helps.
It took me a while. I really had to listen, to Caroline. So my goal is to go back to higher education. So, and our grant is for 9th through 12th grade students. So what happens once you leave high school? Where are you going? What skills do you need? So listening to everyone else just helped me try a little more.
It's funny, I was talking to my daughter who's in high school, and since school year just started for her, she came home and she was like, Dad, you're not going to believe this. My teachers actually talked about AI in class. I was like, really? What'd they say? And she was like, they told us not to use it. And I was like, oh, okay. And I said, did they give any real reasons why? Because it's one thing if a teacher has, I think, some justification between when they introduce it, how they use it, and how they want their students to use it, and they don't want them just using, ChatGPT for everything. But she said, no, they just said that don't use it because they can tell when you use it.
Really?
And so, to me, it's disheartening because we're at a point where, I started using ChatGPT back in 2022, and we're over halfway through 2024, and we still have folks that are anti-AI, but they've never really used it to know why they're anti-AI.
We've had that conversation before, and that's come up with every new tool that's approached a school. And in New York, or actually around the United States, I believe, there's a phone ban in classrooms. So it seems like we always go to extremes. Either you're going to fully embrace it and use it, or you can't use it at all. instead of finding ways to integrate it. And it could be, like you said, and even I noticed in my research, what did everyone say? Professional development. We are not given time to just play and work with experts, coaches, who can help us with the tools. So if we don't have the time, if our administration doesn't endorse it, then we're not going to bother.
I'm going to go backwards a bit, back to the what have we been up to? What have we been using AI for? And I want to share a few things that I've been using it for. Since we last have been chatting, I've got super excited about all kinds of generative AI, and I've been using it in all kinds of different ways. But for my hobbies, I absolutely love gardening and I love cooking. So with cooking, for example, it's amazing. You can photograph what's in your fridge, you can photograph what's in your cupboard, you can upload it and ask it to suggest recipes based on what you've got. And then you can say, okay, now put that through a Chinese lens, put that through a Moroccan lens, put it through a French lens, and it can come up with recipes for what you can do with what's in your fridge. You can also reverse engineer. So let's say you're in a restaurant, there's a meal you're eating you really like. You can take a photograph of that, upload it, and get it to suggest the ingredients that are in it and the recipe that's in it as well, and the recipe towards that, and then you can cook that at home. So I've been using that a lot in my hobbies. Yes. I've also been using it for gardening. I love gardening. I've built a home composting system. I'm trying to grow all my own fruit and vegetables, but I'm not the most knowledgeable at this. So I've been going around my garden, I've been taking photographs of seedlings and plants, I've been uploading them, asking what they are, is it in the right position, does it need more sun? So it's been giving me advice about this. And I've got a new elderly neighbour who's just moved in next door. And I went to introduce myself, and she loves plants. And we were looking around her garden and we started chatting. And I showed her how we could use AI for this, and she was fascinated. So we had to go around and photograph all the different plants and then do the same thing. Were they in the right place? How should we look after them? She was totally hooked immediately after that. Another thing, more on a personal level, my son failed a maths exam recently and he had to retake it, and we had the list of topics that he needed to retake. It was a long list of topics and he was really down and he didn't know where to start. So by carefully crafting a prompt, we managed to create a prompt where you could input the topic. It would then give you a description of each of the mathematical aspects, explain them to you in a simple way. It would then pose questions related to that mathematical aspect. It would do that a number of times. You would respond. If you didn't get it right, it would give hints, up to about 3 or 4 hints we worked out was the best. And then it would take you to the next question. And it would work out, it would evaluate when it thought you had understood that mathematical point, gave you feedback on what you learnt, where you were then, and then took you to the next point. So we'd actually created an adaptive learning platform just through using ChatGPT. And another incident with a neighbour, because I'm an English speaker, I live in Turkey, people are often asking me to help them prepare things in English. And one of my neighbours was preparing for an interview in English for a financial position, and she was really worried, and she invited me for coffee and asked me to sit and could we go through what interview questions might come up, could we practice. So of course we set up a prompt with GPT-4 through the phone so we could have a conversation, and with the right prompting it got her to introduce herself, her background, and then ChatGPT started posing questions to her which she would respond to. We started from simpler ones going to more complex ones, asking her to give examples, concrete examples of what she'd done in previous jobs. She was hooked. She loved it. By the time we'd finished coffee and finished that session, she'd already downloaded ChatGPT. And these kind of examples where they're useful in real life, that's the same kind of approach I'm trying to take with the AI cafe I run at the university for university instructors. So when they first come along, we don't dive into, okay, how can we use this for teaching and learning, or what are the challenges, what are the issues. We have this personal conversation about their hobbies or about their needs and then we dive into the things like the cooking or the gardening or the neighbour or helping the child. And that is a great way to really personalise it. They're interested, they get involved, and then we start using out some of the tools that way. And then the next time we meet, they're hooked, and we can get more onto, the professional uses of it.
Caroline, it's brilliant because, like, as you're talking about, like, what ingredients are in your refrigerator, my mind immediately went to project-based learning. These are the materials I have. This is the project I need to make. How can I make this happen? And just being able to take a picture of that, upload it, and get that feedback, and then maybe even asking, what's an ingredient or what's a supply that I need that I don't have that would make this even better. And just getting that feedback from the AI, my mind immediately went to school applications just based on your suggestion there of, what ingredients do I have to make Moroccan food.
I was actually thinking personally because sometimes there's some odd things in the refrigerator. So we go, hey, so can I be a stick in the mud for a second?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I was thinking there are articles out there where people are banning AI. Would they say, using AI to help me cook, kind of like the Chopped TV show, is that taking away my critical thinking skills? That's not how I think. And Dan, you already gave suggestions on how you can enhance it. But what would we say to people who might feel that way, or help them realize it's just another tool?
It's made me more creative, I think. Sorry, Julie.
No, go. How would you feel it's more creative?
More creative, because I don't just stop at what it tells me. I might not like what it tells me, or I might, like Dan was saying, am I missing anything? Can I pop out to the shops and get something that would improve on this? So it's just the start of a conversation. And then I'm deciding what mood am I in, what would I like to cook, who am I cooking for? So it turns into a much longer critical conversation. It's personalised. So I'm putting my human judgment and my personalisation in this. And I think that's the big difference. But I've learned so many different types of cooking I never would have tried before. It never crossed my mind. I've lost my train of thought. There's a great analogy that I've got. I'm going to go find it and I'll come back to this.
Well, okay, one of the things too that I have noticed with the AI that I use in class, which is school AI, and one of the things I've noticed is that it asks a lot of questions. It's not just about providing answers. The chatbots that my students use, instead of removing the critical thinking, it forces critical thinking because it continues to ask students questions like, where do you see this in your daily life? Or how do you think these two ideas connect? And so it gives students the opportunity to really expand on what they know and like how they're applying this information. The other great thing about it though is that if a student doesn't know something, like they don't know how it applies to their everyday life, that is a complete mystery. It's okay for them to say, I don't know. And that's something that we don't always encourage in classrooms, where students don't always feel comfortable, is saying, I don't know. I don't have the answer. So when they say, I don't know to the chatbot, it literally says, that's okay. And then it explains, the connections. And it's empowered the growth aspect of learning for students, because it's okay to not know something. They're still going to learn by telling the AI that they don't know.
It makes sense, and then my mind goes to, because like Caroline, I work with teachers or pre-service teachers. How do we help teachers, pre-service teachers, feel the same way? It's okay, I don't know. It's impossible to know the answer to every single thing a student is ever going to ask you. And so how do we find the way to say, I don't know, by still having that control of the class and maybe saying, That's a great question. Let's find out. What tools do you think we could use to find out? So I think that might be part of the mindset and the fear of trying something different that's going to instantly have all the answers that maybe I don't have.
It doesn't have all the answers, though. I really like. I love the I don't know in class. I've been very open to I don't know for many, many years. Because, it will come up, especially if you're teaching an advanced topic, and sometimes you think, oh, I need to brush up on my knowledge on this. And in previously, before AI, I would say that's a really good question. I need to check this, and I'll get back to you. Now we can do it together in class. We can have that conversation together in class. And chances are, I do know that information. I just needed to refresh my knowledge, because I'm on the spot there. And this is the thing with AI, it doesn't always come out with correct answers. It's not always right. But we're the subject matter experts in our classrooms. We're experienced in this. So when we have those conversations with AI in class, we are then in a position to verify what's coming out, or to challenge it, or, to ask the students what they think. So again, it's a starting point for a deeper conversation. So I think I don't knows, like Dan was saying, are fantastic. We want more I don't knows in the classroom, because they can then lead to these deeper discussions, deeper investigations, and that's modeling to students how they can learn from AI as well.
But by the way, Caroline, I got to tell you, kindergarten kids and first graders have stumped me on questions too. Not just those higher level classes.
Oh no, it can be anything. Toddlers, why is the sky blue? Any question.
Usually third grade math stumps me.
The math stumps me. That's why I built the adaptive learning platform for my son, because I couldn't help him. I couldn't answer the questions or support him.
So, John, I'm anxious to hear, being an intervention specialist, what do you see as some of the applications for, AI with your students? What are some of the things that you're just pondering at this point?
I think a couple of things. One of the things I used it last year I had to come up with a reading passage on a certain grade level. And it was able to include a couple of my students' names in the passage. Just something very silly. I think I had that to do with Pokemon. And it caught the kids' attention, so they enjoyed that. I think sometimes leveling, like I know I've heard you talk about. I guess, one question, maybe for you and for the group, is how do you instill, and this can be with staff, this has to do with me as well, and educators, how do you get students to want to go deeper? Because there's times I know with me, I'll be honest, I think, you know what, good enough is good enough. I really don't need that right now. I don't need to go that extra way. How do you instill that and show them that, this is exciting, and going to the next level is something I want?
Well, it's interesting. When I started using school AI with my students, I got a new group of 7th graders last week. We started using the chatbot the second day. When they started in on their conversation, they ended up talking with the chatbot for about 20 minutes. They didn't even realize that time had gone by that much. And I asked them, I said, why did you continue to have the conversation? And they said, because it kept asking me questions. And so they felt that they needed to respond. And not all of these students are higher level students. Some of them really struggle, and some of them are just, average students. So there's a great mix of kiddos in there. And once they start to use the technology, once they start to use that chatbot, they feel safe. They know it's not going to judge them for not knowing. It moves them on through the conversation in ways that a traditional classroom discussion doesn't. Because I think a lot of times it's easy to kick back and hide in a classroom when it's just an open dialogue. But also, I tell the students, I get a copy of your transcript. I know when you're trying to not engage the AI. Because I get a little emoji beside the student's conversation. It could be a glowing, happy emoji, or it could be an angry emoji. And it's kind of the AI's response to how well this conversation's going. If a student's not putting much into it, I get either a sad face or an angry face, and it allows me to go and intervene and just encourage a little bit and check in, see what's going on, because our students are masters at looking like they're busy without being busy. And so this is that engagement piece that keeps them moving forward. And there's that accountability piece there too, because I still get to intervene. I'm still their teacher. I still get to provide the support. So I think that that's one of the reasons why the AI tools are as beneficial as they are, because of the feedback that we can get from them and how natural it feels for students to have that conversation.
Personalization as well really grabs their attention. So when we set up these prompts, we can also set it up so it can show how what they're learning is transferable to their lives and what they're interested in. Just like my neighbor in the garden was fascinated, or my neighbor with the interview. So whatever topic you're teaching, you can set up the prompts as well. Say, how do you think this could transfer into your everyday life? And it can drill down further questions in that. So the relevance of what the students are learning really jumps out at them. And this is something we've always wanted to do in class, but it's very difficult with a large group of students. But here it's personalized and it's adaptive. And so this conversation about relevance to our students' personal lives can develop through the AI.
Well, that makes me think of, I guess my son goes on TikTok some. It makes me think of probably every student who's on TikTok has a different feed because it just gradually filters to their interests. And I'll be honest, there's times where I want to go in his TikTok and just put in a bunch of positive things, because there's things sometimes as a middle school boy, why is he talking about this? I mean, it's not inappropriate, but sometimes why is he thinking this way? Why is he looking at it this way? It's almost as if I want to go in there and type in some other things and some new searches for him so that it changes his TikTok feed. But I think he'd catch on to that too pretty quickly.
We have the ability to do that, so we can put those filters in right at the beginning, so this gives us the advantage to nudge them in the right direction.
Now this is exciting because our students can't use any AI at all. We can't use AI at school, so that's why I'm very interested in all those.
Is there like a policy against that?
Yeah, there is. I remember last year asking, I was able to use ChatGPT at school 2 years ago, and then they stopped it. And yeah, we can't use any AI, and students definitely can't use it.
I'm at a university. Our policy is that every instructor should be trying to integrate AI into their teaching and learning in ways that support how AI is advancing their discipline. It's part of our policy to use it and work out effective ways to use it.
And see, we were able to develop a middle school policy. I mean, it's pretty cut and dry in that we want students to use it because we're using it in the classroom. But students also have to acknowledge when they use it. And we treat it very much like, hey, my mom wrote this, instead of I copied and pasted. So if there's a student who uses AI, they don't acknowledge that they used it, then the first consequence is they have to sit down with the teacher and have a meeting about ethical use of AI. Happens twice, their family comes in, they come in, and they have a meeting with the principal. Third time, it's with the superintendent. So it's very cut and dry. They know exactly what the consequences are, but that's new for us this year.
This is bad. I gotta say it out loud. I'm thinking, I wonder if the student before they goes in for that interview goes on AI and says, how should I respond? I'm getting ready to get grilled on my AI use. What do I say?
Two things. John said, how do we know when it's time to stop going deeper with something? I was thinking, just having, the conversation with a student. Because you're right, I could sit at ChatGPT or Gamma or whatever and just continue going down a rabbit hole. And I could sit there where I say it's going to save me time, and then next thing I know, I've been sitting there for 3 hours. And I'm like, what the heck happened? But maybe even having conversations with students. One, I think it will take time. I think it will take time for them to get over the nuance of it as a toy. I know, I'm going to use that word. They're going to get over the nuance of it as a toy and see it as a tool, but that's going to happen over time in playing with it. And then I think secondly, just having the conversation. Did you get enough information for what you needed to know at this time? So you can move on, yes or no. And maybe next time, what new questions might you ask if you wanted to go further? So think maybe prompting and time. And then back to just even my beginning question of, so what are you all doing now? You reminded me the most important thing that has truly changed since I started talking about AI, or in my district where we started talking about AI. We went to a Mid-Hudson Law School conference, and of course, what was the first topic of the conference, and that's why our assistant superintendent sent all of the leaders from the instructional services department, it was AI. And of course, there were laws and what's happening, and we all were writing down, if we are putting together a grant, if we are talking about AI, what is our own policy? We need to write a policy. That was not a conversation when I first started looking at AI, because no one even wanted to talk about it. Kind of like cyberbullying, I remember that. Nobody wanted to talk about that. That's never going to happen. And now we're talking about policy. How do we put together a policy? What resources, what people are we reaching out to help us put this together? That is something that has definitely changed over time for me as well.
Can I jump in? Sorry, it's a bit fragmented, but this is building on what Dan said earlier and what you just said in the first part there, Julie. So one thing I'm doing myself, and I'm recommending to instructors now as well, is at the end of a lesson, which is what you were saying, Julie, at the end of a lesson, if we've used AI, we should have a reflection period on that AI and say, what tool did we use? How did we use it? What did we gain from this? What did we lose? What were the pros and what were the cons? And what have we learnt about AI or this AI tool from this experience? And I think that helps us, understand better, because it does take away in some ways. It does give in so many ways as well, but we need to have the big picture. So I'm always including that now at the end of a lesson.
So, you know what? I'm so glad that we have come back together and that we are meeting. I cannot wait to hear more about what you are doing in your classroom, John.
I say Julie picks up the check.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. No, it's supposed to be John.
John, thanks so much for joining us. You get the check.
I enjoyed my one and only meeting. This will be my last time.
Oh, no.
I'm kidding. This has been good. First of all, I want to thank you for letting me join this conversation. This has been interesting because I've been sitting at a table nearby and listening to your conversations, but I've never been part of the table. And so that's been quite interesting. And it's encouraging to hear how far you've come in the last year, because I feel like I've got a long ways to go, but I also see the potential of, maybe a year or two into this where I could be. And for me, I think what I'm taking away, I think it was Caroline that shared all the uses of generative AI at home. That might be where I start dabbling in this and then get more comfortable with that and then start using it to help me with schoolwork and classwork and help my students. But this has been eye-opening, so thank you very much.
We are so happy that you joined us, John. We are going to just pass that check right over to you.
I'll take it this time. I'll take it.
Thank you, John.
All right, I'll see you guys next week.
See you next week. Have a great week.
You can see links to all the tools mentioned in this episode in the show notes. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for tuning in. If you're a principal, superintendent, technologist, or CTO looking for creative ways to kickstart conversations about generative AI with your team, head over to Hacking Gen AI in Education to access a growing library of stimulating conversation starters. Just click the link in the show notes or go to hackinggenai.org to start relevant conversations that will engage your entire team and take your AI discussions to the next level. Till next time, keep the conversation going.